But first, we're asking you, are we seeing the death of the album? We asked Manic Street Preachers' James Dean Bradfield whether the album as an art form is over.
It's very confusing and hard to get your head around the fact that perhaps a lot of the way that we're doing things is destroying the actual art form of the album. I don't care if it sounds pompous, you know, a great album is an actual art form to kind of conquer, you know, to actually try and do it. Whether it be the times are changing, or whether it be in utero, or whether it be Nevermind the Bollocks, or It Takes a Nation of Millions to hold us back. Albums, when they're perfect, are an art form, and it's getting harder and harder to actually countenance people just listening to albums from start to finish. And it's just mad, you know. Films in their highest achievement are seen as great pieces of art. So are paintings, so are novels. But the album just seems to be taking a kick in as an actual vehicle, as an actual art form.
Interesting point there from James Dean Bradfield from the Manic Street Preachers, talking about the death of the album as an art form. We'll be hearing from him more later in the show. He's going to be answering some of your questions. Manic Street Preachers, Motorcycle Emptiness. Fantastic to hear that on Six Music. So if you heard last week's show or podcast, you'll know that we posed some of your questions to Depeche Mode's Dave Garn last week.
Yeah, we had some great responses to that, so we thought we'd do the same again with James Dean Bradfield. Here's Imran putting your questions to the Manics frontman and getting him to talk about the future of Manic Street Preachers.
James, thanks for joining us.
Howdy, how you doing, man?
So we have been asking our listeners, Six Music listeners, for questions for you, and we've got a mixture of their questions and some of our questions. Now, the first one here is from David Litchfield in Huddersfield. He said, what are your ideas for the next musical direction of the Manics? And are you looking to the past or the contemporary for it?
In terms of perhaps the next record we do, scarily, we're kind of starting to kind of dust off our old metal influences. Nicky Wire in the band was a massive Rush fan, the band Rush, when he was young, and I kind of got into him a wee bit later. And we're going through a bit of a Who period as well. Can't stop listening to Quadrophenia. So I don't know, hopefully that won't turn into some kind of conceptual rock opera, but it's definitely going quite rock.
It's interesting you talked about some of your influences and what you were listening to years ago, and you started listening to it again. You very much had a punk ethos when you started.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, obviously the big news last week, the Sex Pistols are reforming for the one-off gig.
Yeah.
What did you make of that?
To be honest, there's always quite a lot of cynicism when bands reform. I kind of understand that, but no one ever seems to equate the fact that, you know, that sometimes bands reform because they actually miss being in that band. They actually miss playing that music together. And if you or I had been in the Sex Pistols, or anybody listening, you know, if you'd once been in that band and you were offered a chance to play in that band again, you'd jump at the chance, wouldn't you? Because, you know, Nevermind the Bollocks is still just one of the best rock albums ever recorded. Not even punk rock, it's just amazing molten piece of rock music. So, I mean, kind of just on that very simplistic level of just thinking, if you'd once played in one of the greatest bands ever and you've given that chance again, you would just go, yeah, I want to be back in that band again.
I wanted to ask, there's a good story on the Daily Star online.
Yeah.
Manic's KO street cred. Manic Street Preachers are planning to shatter their credibility by releasing a cheesy festive single this Christmas. Can you tell us more about this proposed Christmas single?
Oh, okay, well,
is it even happening? Or?
Number one, we've KO'd our street cred many, many, many times.
But when the Daily Star say it, then you've got to sit up and take notice.
Oh my God, from that lofty pedestal of judgment. No, it's kind of like, I just actually, you know, kind of, Christmas singles don't have to be bad things. The Pogues proved that, you know. And also, I actually like the idea of just doing something in the Manics for fun, just for once. Doing a massive, just glam stomp, kind of like, you know, just slab of just glam stomp Xmas, kind of like, you know, just Rush. You know, I just like the idea of it. I mean, I'm going to go down to Cardiff next week, and we're going to start banging around a few couple of ideas. I mean, if that finishes us off, then we're not a very strong band.
What bands around at the moment do you see a bit of like the young Manics in? Maybe is the Enemy one of them? Like what they're talking about?
No, I think kind of like him. I think the Enemy are different because they write in a very different style. Kind of like Tom's lyrics are much more based on some kind of little social vignettes, as they say, whereas we were slightly different the way we wrote songs. To be honest, that's one thing about the Manics. Perhaps it could be seen as one of our failures. I don't really think that. It doesn't really seem as if we've influenced many bands that have come around in the last couple of years. We don't seem to really be an influence benchmark for new bands. So perhaps that's a failure. Perhaps it's a victory. Perhaps we're too hard to copy. I don't know. It's one or the other. Perhaps I see it as a negative thing that we don't seem to have any kind of a impression upon the contemporary music scene in terms of new bands coming out. But Nick sees it from a point of view, Nicky in the band, he sees it from the point of view that, at the end of the day, if a band's going to be influenced by us, they'll be influenced by the Holy Bible period. And that's kind of hard to emulate because obviously, subsequent things that happened, especially with Richey, it's hard to live up to that, You can have the job description of Richey would be, must be impossibly cool, must be impossibly intelligent, must be impossibly principled, must be able to drink vodka very well in quantities, and must take the weight of the world on his shoulders at every single opportunity. It's not really a job you're going to apply for, is it?
No.
So I think a lot of that is down to Richey. I think, he's a very hard act to follow.